looking at self-esteem. As children develop, they not only come to understand more about themselves and construct intricate self-portraits, but they also begin to evaluate the qualities that they perceive themselves as having. And this evaluative aspect is what we call self-esteem. And self-esteem is related to how satisfied people are with their lives and their overall outlook. Children characterised as having high self-esteem are fundamentally satisfied with the type of person that they are. They recognise their own strong points, they acknowledge their weaknesses. They feel positive about their characteristics and their competences. There are multiple elements to the development of self-esteem as young people age. If we look at Harter's work, 4 to 7 year olds are rated as inflated egos because they tend to rate themselves positively on all domains. Now this could be because their ratings reflect their desire to be good at something versus what their actual abilities are. And having a foundation of firm self-worth. But their ratings aren't completely unrealistic because they do tend to correlate with the test scores they get from teachers and how their teachers rate them. 8-year-olds Cooley refers to as looking glasses. The self-esteem and the self-rating of an 8-year-old tends to more closely match that of other people. So a child in this space will rate themselves as socially competent, and their peers will also rate them as socially competent. So this suggests to us that self-knowledge and self-esteem depend on the ways that other people perceive and react to our behaviour. By the time we reach adolescence, we've reached relational self-worth, which means that our feelings of self-worth as an adolescent function in a particular way in particular relational contexts and can differ across relational contexts. So if we have a child that is in an all-female group, a female child in an all-female group, or a female child in an all-male group, or vice versa. If we have a child relating with parents or a child relating with their teachers, all of these different relationships can have different, the child's self-worth can be differently affected. So for the example on the screen there, if the young person considers themselves to be bright and the teacher considers them to be bright as well, that's going to have a positive impact on their self-esteem. But if the young person is proud of what they're doing in this intellectual space, but their peers perceive them as nerdy, that could have a negative impact on their self-worth. Now that young person could still have high self-esteem depending on their own internal values. Do they value education and intellect more than the negative connotation that their peers place on it? So self-esteem is very context specific for adolescents. Now girls reporting high self-esteem tend to report supportive friendships, whereas adolescent boys tend to link their self-esteem to their ability to be able to influence their friends rather than support and be supported by their friends, or their ability to obtain and maintain romantic relationships, or not having competence in that romantic relationship space. there are many different sources of self-esteem. And we come back to attachment theory here. And now remember that attachment theory is that if we feel loved and accepted when we are young, we come to believe that we are lovable and worthy of acceptance by other people. So parents who are accepting and involved with their children, who have good attachment between parent and child, and those parents are using supportive but firm parenting practices, their children tend to have higher self-esteem. As we previously mentioned, though, self-esteem is increasingly affected by peers rather than parents. So we move past attachment theory and we start looking at how self-esteem is impacted by peers. So for example, by the time they're moving from late childhood into early adolescence, a young person's feeling of competence about their athletic abilities or their likability is probably going to be more affected by their peers than it is by their parents. But as they grow and mature, by the end of adolescence, they're reaching a point where their self-esteem is less tied to the approval of others and more about their own internal standards. So let's look at those individual traits of self-esteem, such as physical appearance or athletic ability or intellectual ability or personality. And by personality, we might mean how well we function in a social setting, how relatable we think we are, etc. And you'll see that there's some big differences across genders in terms of what adolescents are concerned about and therefore how those things might impact on their self-esteem. Now, so the reason for these differences, some of it's going to be linked to the maturational changes associated with puberty and possibly social contextual factors. Again, so we come back to how many boys or girls are there in a classroom, and we come back to that gender difference in what ideal body image is. Our textbook refers to multiple stresses. So if we take into account that these young people are going through the body changes associated with puberty and they're experiencing school transition at the same time, and girls are more likely to be dissatisfied with their appearance and their bodies, then that's 3 stresses on self-esteem for the girls. And at that point in year 7, the boys may only be experiencing the school transition stressor. And of course, there's other sources for self-esteem that aren't listed on the slide here. And one of those would be conduct, which is, as you can see, conduct is a big thing for the young boys. So, and when we're talking about conduct, we're talking about how does the conduct of the young person impact on their self-esteem? Are they behaving in ways that are morally sanctioned? And is that improving their self-esteem? So what can we do as teachers to influence self-esteem? So this table you'll find in the Pearson set text, chapter 4.2, and we'll expand on that further in the workshops.